The alarm went off at 5:47 a.m., not because Victoria Calloway needed to be anywhere at 6. She had nowhere to be until 9. She set it early because silence in the penthouse had a weight to it, a dense, pressurized quiet that felt like the inside of a submarine, and she had learned, over years of living alone at the top of a building, that the only way to manage it was to cut it short. She lay still for a moment, ceiling above her, 12 feet of white plaster, a single brushed, chrome light fixture centered like a period at the end of a sentence. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago was beginning its slow gray transformation into morning. She watched the skyline without moving. It never changed. That was the thing about living this high up, the view was permanent. Everything below stayed small, and at a distance, arranged like pieces on a board, she had already finished playing. Victoria was 33 years old, and she had built Calloway Capital from a 3-person consulting firm into a mid-market private equity operation with nearly $400 million in assets under management. She had done it in 9 years. The financial press called her precise. Her own team called her not to her face the machine. Neither description bothered her. Precision was a form of care, and machines, unlike people, did not disappoint. She got up. Made coffee. Same beans. Same grind. Same temperature every morning. Dressed in the kind of clothes that cost $3,000 but looked like they cost nothing at all. Gathered her things, rode the elevator down 42 floors, nodded at Marcus the doorman, and stepped into the black car that was waiting at the curb. The day arranged itself around her the way days always did. Meetings, calls, a working lunch, a board briefing. She moved through all of it with the low-grade efficiency of someone who had stopped being surprised by her own competence. The work was not hard anymore. It was simply relentless. She had been in 2 relationships in the past 5 years. Both men had been appropriate, wealthy, ambitious, socially fluent. The kind of people her assistant would describe as a good match on paper. The first had lasted 14 months before she realized she was performing interest rather than feeling it. The second had ended when he told her, carefully, that being with her felt like being evaluated. She had not disagreed. She had thanked him for his honesty and ended the relationship over dinner, so no one would have to take a car home alone. She did not think about loneliness directly. She thought about it the way you think about a noise in the walls of a building you own, aware of it, mildly concerned, choosing to deal with it at a more convenient time. Across the city, a different alarm was going off. Daniel Marsh hit the snooze once, then thought of his daughter's face when she was disappointed, and got up. He was 36. Medium height, wide shoulders, the kind of hands that had been useful for long enough that they showed it. He worked as a maintenance technician for a property management company 12 buildings across the north side, everything from HVAC to plumbing to the occasional electrical repair that was technically above his pay grade. But that he did anyway because if he didn't, the problem waited, and problems never got smaller by waiting. His apartment was a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a 6-flat in Avondale. The building was not beautiful. The hallway smelled faintly of old cooking and carpet shampoo. But his apartment was clean, genuinely clean, the kind of clean that takes daily effort, rather than occasional panic. And his daughter Lily's room had a string of paper stars that she had made herself hanging across the window, and a low bookshelf sorted not alphabetically, but by color, because she was 6 years old and colors made more sense to her than letters. Lily was still asleep. She slept the way children sleep, when they are completely safe, face pressed sideways into the pillow, one arm flung out, mouth slightly open. Daniel stood in the doorway of her room for a moment, without turning on the light. This was a thing he did every morning. He could not have explained why, except that it reset something in him. It reminded him of the point. He made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, from concentrate, because the real kind was $2 more, and he was aware of $2. He packed Lily's lunch, peanut butter and banana, the crusts cut off because she was 6, and crusts were apparently non-negotiable, and laid out her clothes on the chair by her dresser. His wife, Claire, had died 3 years ago. A stroke, fast, and without warning, the kind that the doctors explained in terms of statistics, and he had understood only as the sudden absence of her. She had been 32. She had been the person who made him feel like the best version of himself, And after she died, he had spent roughly 8 months being a worse version of himself before he looked at Lily one morning and understood that he did not have the option of staying broken. He had not dated since. Not because he had made a decision about it. More because there was no room. Work. Lily. The paper stars. The scrambled eggs. The $2 difference between the good orange juice and the concentrate. These things filled the hours, and he let them fill the hours because when they didn't, the quiet was too much. He was not unhappy. That was the thing people who pitied him never quite believed. He was tired, sometimes. Stretched, thin, often, but there was a solidity to his life, a dailiness that felt more real to him than anything he had experienced in the years when he had more and worried about it less. These two lives existed in the same city, the way parallel lines exist in geometry, forever close, never intersecting, until they did. It happened in October. Victoria's building, the one where Callaway Capital kept its offices on the 21st floor, had a parking structure that was managed by the same property company Daniel worked for. The structure's main ventilation unit had begun making a sound like a large animal being slightly inconvenienced, and the building manager had submitted a work order, and the work order had come to Daniel. He was in the parking structure at 8:15 in the morning, in coveralls, with a set of tools and a diagnostic unit. When Victoria arrived, she walked past him without breaking stride, phone to her ear, talking in the clipped shorthand of someone who had been mid-conversation since before she got in the car. She registered him as an obstacle in her path, adjusted her trajectory by 18 inches, and passed. Daniel watched her go for approximately 1 second, the blazer, the particular speed of someone who had already decided exactly where they were going, and then went back to the ventilation unit. He fixed the problem in 40 minutes. A bearing, worn down. Simple. He wrote the work order, collected his tools, and was heading back to his truck when he heard a small voice. "You have grease on your face." He stopped. Lily was not supposed to be here. She was supposed to be at school, but it was a teacher in service day that he had not properly entered into the internal calendar he kept in his head. And so she was with him, sitting on a folding chair near his toolbox, eating the banana from her lunch bag and examining him with the particular frankness that 6-year-olds reserve for pointing out things adults have missed. "I know," he said. "It's on your cheek, and also your chin a little. Thank you, Lily. You're welcome." She put the banana peel carefully into the paper bag. She was very tidy for 6. Claire had been tidy. He did not know if it was inherited or learned or simply coincidence. "When are we going?" "Now," he said. Victoria had come back down. She had forgotten something, her portfolio, left on the back seat of the car. She walked back into the structure and stopped when she saw the child. Lily looked up at her with the same candid appraisal she had applied to the grease. "Your jacket is really nice," Lily said. Victoria looked down at her. "Thank you. What color is that?" "I think they call it dove gray. It looks like the inside of a cloud," Lily said, in a tone that was not complimentary or uncomplimentary. Just observational. As if she were naming a fact. Something shifted in Victoria's chest, a small thing, barely perceptible. She looked at the girl, and then at the man standing behind her, who was watching his daughter with an expression she did not have a word for immediately, and then she did. Tenderness. Not the performed kind. The quiet kind that doesn't need an audience. "Nice work on the unit," Victoria said, because she felt she needed to say something. "Thanks," Daniel said. He didn't add anything to it. She picked up her portfolio and left. In the elevator, she found herself thinking about the child's description. The inside of a cloud. She turned the phrase over in her mind for the 45 seconds of the elevator ride, then stepped out on 21 and moved into her morning. She saw him again 3 weeks later. One of the building's conference rooms had a heating issue. She passed him in the hallway, tool bag over one shoulder, a cup of coffee, diner coffee, the kind in a paper cup with a plastic lid in his other hand. He nodded. She nodded. Neither stopped. She saw him a third time in the parking structure again, in November, when she was leaving late past 7 and he was finishing a repair on a light fixture. He was on a 6-foot ladder, Lily was not with him this time. He was humming something she didn't recognize. She stopped without meaning to. He came down off the ladder and noticed her. "Done for the night?" he asked. It was not flirtatious. It was just the thing you said to a person who appeared to be leaving a building. "Yes," she said. He nodded and began folding the ladder. She watched him for a moment. He moved efficiently, no wasted motion, nothing performed. He broke down the task the way someone does when they have done something so many times it has become unconscious, like breathing. "Do you enjoy your work?" she asked. He paused, looked at her like the question was somewhat unusual coming from someone who had never asked him anything that wasn't logistical. "Some days," he said. Today was a good one, because, fixed 4 things, all of them stayed fixed. She almost smiled. "That's a reasonable metric. It's the only one that matters," he said. He picked up the ladder and the tool bag. "Have a good night." She watched him walk toward the service elevator. She did not understand why she was still standing there after he was gone. She began paying attention in the way she paid attention to things she was considering, which was to say, carefully and without showing it. She noticed. He never tried to extend their brief exchanges. He never positioned himself in her path. He answered questions directly and without embellishment. He did not treat her differently because she owned things. He treated her the way he seemed to treat everyone in the building, straightforwardly, without hierarchy. This was unusual to her. Most people arranged themselves around her money or her title without being aware they were doing it. It was like a gravitational field she carried. People leaned toward it or against it, but they always felt it. He didn't seem to feel it at all. She mentioned him once, in passing, to her friend and colleague Stephanie Voss. "The maintenance guy?" Stephanie said. "He's interesting," Victoria said, which was not the same thing as saying she was interested, but Stephanie raised an eyebrow anyway. "Define interesting," Victoria considered. "He doesn't try. Men who don't try are either confident or indifferent," Stephanie said. "Usually you can tell which." "Which is this one?" Victoria thought about it. "Neither, exactly," she said. And that was where she left it. Because she didn't have a better answer. In December, she invited him to dinner. She did it through the building manager, which was already a mistake. Though she didn't recognize it as one, she had the manager pass along a message, something about wanting to personally thank the maintenance staff for the year's work. A small gesture, nothing formal. It was a social fiction that she understood to be transparent. But it gave both of them a frame that didn't require anyone to name what it actually was. He accepted. She didn't know why she was surprised by this. She had expected him to decline. She chose a restaurant, not the most expensive place she knew, but a step or two up from neutral. A French bistro in the West Loop with good lighting and a wine list she understood well. She reserved a table in a corner that was private without being conspicuously private. She wore the dove-gray blazer. Though she could not have said whether this was intentional, he arrived on time. He was wearing dark trousers and a collared shirt, clean, well-fitting, nothing remarkable. He sat down across from her and looked at the menu for approximately 45 seconds, and then set it aside. "What's good here?" he asked. "The duck," she said. "And the halibut." "Duck," he said. She flagged the server and ordered for both of them, which she did automatically, and which, she noticed a second later, he did not comment on. He didn't seem bothered by it. He also didn't seem deferential about it. He just let her order because he'd indicated what he wanted, and she'd handled it, and that was a reasonable division of labor. She had prepared, she realized, in the way she prepared for meetings, with questions, with context, with a light structure she could use to guide the conversation. She was aware that this was not how people typically approach dinner. She was aware, and she did it anyway. She asked about his work. He answered without false modesty or performance. He asked about her work. She answered and watched to see if his eyes shifted when she mentioned the numbers, the way people's eyes often shifted, calculating, reassessing, rearranging her into a new category. His eyes didn't shift. "Does it feel like what you expected?" he asked. "What do you mean, building something? Does it feel the way you thought it would?" No one asked her this. They asked about growth projections and portfolio performance and exit strategy. They asked what she thought the market would do. They did not ask how it felt. She took a breath. Not exactly, she said. Better or worse? Different. Quieter. He looked at her steadily. Quieter seems like it could be either thing. He said. Yes, she said. I haven't decided which. He nodded, like this was a reasonable answer, and reached for his wine. The evening was pleasant. She had expected to find it easy. She was good at dinner, at managing conversation, at making people feel heard while learning more about them than they had intended to share. But it was not easy, exactly. It was something else. She could not maneuver him. Not because he resisted being maneuvered, he didn't. He wasn't guarded. He was just completely and unhurriedly himself, in the way that made maneuver irrelevant. She was not used to that. A week later, they met again. Not at a restaurant. She had seen him at the building, in the lobby, and asked if he had a few minutes, and he had said yes, and they had ended up sitting in the small cafe on the building's ground floor, with mediocre coffee, and nobody pretending the setting was anything other than what it was. She had been thinking about asking her question for several days. She was not an impulsive person. She had waited. She had tried to find a softer approach and come away empty. Finally, she had decided that directness, which she valued in other contexts, should apply here. She set down her coffee cup. I want to ask you something, she said. All right, he said. Why don't you want to date me? The question landed quietly. She had not said it with drama or heat. It was a genuine inquiry, the kind she might apply to any problem she didn't understand. But she watched his face and saw that it landed, that he took a beat before answering, and that the beat was not awkwardness. It was thought. He was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that she considered recalibrating, softening, adding a qualifier. She didn't. You're asking me like there's one reason, he said finally. Is there more than one? He looked at her not unkindly, not defensively. With a steadiness, she was beginning to associate specifically with him. Victoria, he said, and it was the first time he had used her name in conversation, and it arrived simply, without particular weight. I think you're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? I think the right question is, what are you actually looking for? She did not answer immediately. He continued, gently. Because from what I can see, and I'm not saying this to be harsh, you're not looking for someone. You're looking for a feeling. You want to feel like you're still someone who can be chosen, who can want something and have it. He paused. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a very human thing. But I'm not a feeling. I'm a person, and those two things don't line up. Victoria had been told hard things before. In board meetings, in negotiations, in the clinical aftermath of failed relationships, she had a facility for receiving hard things, absorbing them, filing them, moving past. But this was different because it was not a criticism. It was a description. And descriptions, unlike criticisms, are almost impossible to refute. You think I'm using you? She said. I don't think you're doing it on purpose, he said. I think you might not even know you're doing it. She looked at her coffee. At the table. At the window beyond him, where a woman was walking a dog, and the dog was stopping at every single crack in the sidewalk. That's a hard thing to hear, she said. I know. Are you sure you're right? He thought about it. No, he said. I'm not sure of much. But I know what it looks like when someone's trying to fill something in rather than open something up. I've been on the wrong side of that before. He said it matter-of-factly, without accusation. As if he were simply reporting the weather. She sat with that for a moment. And if I told you you were wrong, she asked, then I'd want you to show me, he said, not tell me. She left the cafe before he did. Walked to her car. Sat in it without starting the engine for 4 minutes. And then drove home. She did not sleep well that night, or the next. She went through the motions of her week, the meetings, the calls, the early mornings and late departures, but something had come loose in her internal architecture. She could feel it the way you feel a piece of furniture that has shifted slightly out of alignment, not broken, not immovable, but wrong in a way that you can't stop noticing. She pulled up. In her memory, the men she had been with, Jeffrey the venture capitalist. Appropriate, good on paper. She remembered now. He had told her once, offhand, that she made him feel like a quarterly review. She had thought he was joking. She had laughed. He had not been joking. Thomas, the attorney. 3 years ago. She had chosen him the way she chose most things, through a process of elimination that left only the most qualified candidate. He had been kind and patient and eventually quietly exhausted. When it ended, he had said only, "I think you need a person more than you want one." She had not understood what he meant. She thought she understood now. She went further back. Her first serious relationship. At 26, a man named Craig who had loved her in a loud, particular way, who had left notes in her apartment and remembered her stories and called when he said he would. She had ended it because she was building the company and there was no room. She had not cried about it at the time. She cried about it now, briefly, unexpectedly. Standing in her kitchen at 11 at night with a glass of water she had not drunk. She was not an unfeeling person. That was the thing she had convinced herself of for years, but it wasn't true. She was a person who had learned through some combination of early experience and professional conditioning that feeling things too openly was a vulnerability, and vulnerability was a risk she could not afford. And so she had managed her feelings the way she managed her portfolio, efficiently, with clear entry and exit strategies and minimal exposure. But a portfolio did not need you back. She stood at the window with the lights of the city below her and thought about what Daniel had said. You're not looking for someone. You're looking for a feeling, and the part that cut deepest was not the observation itself, it was that she had recognized it. Immediately. Without argument, she had known, and she had not known she knew. She learned about Claire through the building manager inadvertently, because she had mentioned Daniel's name in a different context, asking about renewing the maintenance contract, and the manager had said, "Good guy. Lost his wife a couple years back. Raises that daughter by himself." Victoria had gone still. "I didn't know that," she said. "Yeah. She was young. He doesn't talk about it much. You wouldn't know to look at him. You wouldn't know to look at him." She thought about that. About the way he had sat across from her in the cafe, unhurried, unguarded, steady. She had read that steadiness as a kind of cool self-possession, a deliberate distance. She understood now that it was something else. It was what you looked like on the other side of a grief you had decided to carry without making it everyone else's problem. She knew distantly what loss felt like her father. When she was 19, fast and brutal, but the year she started the company, because she needed somewhere to put her energy that didn't lead back to herself. She had packed her grief into ambition the way you pack a car for a move, tightly, efficiently, leaving as little exposed as possible. She had been proud of that. She had thought of it as strength. She thought of Daniel at 6 in the morning making scrambled eggs, packing a lunch with the crusts cut off, saying, "Because if I don't fix it now, it only gets worse." She thought of his daughter saying the jacket looked like the inside of a cloud. She thought of the man who had told her he was not a feeling. He was a person. There was a difference, she understood now, between someone who was steady because nothing had touched them, and someone who was steady because they had been touched by everything, and had found a way to remain themselves through it. Daniel Marsh was the second kind, and the reason he could see through her, really see her, the hollow space at the center of her careful life, was that he had spent 3 years learning to look clearly at what was actually in front of him, instead of what he wished was there. His refusal had not been pride. It had been honesty, the most rigorous kind, the kind that cost something. She did not come to him with a changed self. That was not how change worked. What happened, instead, was quieter. Small things accumulated. She began leaving the office at 7 instead of 9. Not because she made a rule about it, because she realized, sitting at her desk one evening with no actual need to be there, that the reason she stayed late had more to do with not wanting to return to the penthouse than it did with the work. The penthouse was not the problem, she knew. The problem was that she had never learned to simply be in a space without a purpose filling it. She called her younger sister, Nora, who lived in Portland, and whom she spoke to 4 times a year in calls that lasted 11 minutes and covered logistics. This time Victoria called on a Wednesday evening for no particular reason, and they spoke for an hour and a half. Nora sounded startled. Later, in a text, she wrote, "I don't know what happened, but I like it." She walked to work one morning instead of taking the car. 40 minutes, through neighborhoods she didn't usually travel through at ground level. She bought coffee from a cart rather than the lobby cafe. She did not check her phone while she drank it. None of this was grand. She was aware of that. She was not being transformed. She was being, slightly and carefully, corrected. And then, one Saturday, the middle of January, the sky the color of old pewter, she ran into Lily. Not Daniel. Lily. She was in a bookstore in Wicker Park that she had not been to before, browsing without purpose, in a way that felt unfamiliar and oddly good, when a small person rounded the corner of the children's section and stopped directly in front of her. Lily Marsh, wearing a red coat and holding a book about birds with a kind of grip that suggested she had not yet decided if she was purchasing it or just spending time with it. "Hi," Lily said. No preamble, no hesitation. "You're the dove-gray jacket lady." Victoria looked down at her. She was wearing a different jacket today, camel-colored, wool. But Lily had clearly filed her under the dove-gray experience in her memory. "That's me," Victoria said. "My dad's paying for his coffee," Lily said, gesturing loosely toward the small cafe attached to the bookstore. "Okay," Victoria said. Lily looked at the book she was holding. "Do you like birds?" "I don't know much about them. Most people don't," Lily said, with the mild regret of someone who found this a little sad. "They're actually very interesting. This one," she pointed to a photograph of a bird with an improbable crest, "is called a hoopoe. It makes a sound like a cartoon." "I didn't know that. Most people don't," Lily said again. They stood together for a moment, looking at the hoopoe. Victoria did not feel the urge to manage the silence. She did not reach for her phone or calculate the appropriate length of time to spend on a children's bird book. She just stood there, and it was she noticed this. Faintly surprised, fine. More than fine. There was something in Lily's complete unself-consciousness that was contagious. "I'm Victoria," she said. "I know," Lily said. "Dad mentioned you." "Did he?" "He said you asked him a hard question." "I did," Victoria said. Lily considered this. "He likes hard questions," she said. "He says easy questions are for people who already know the answer." She said it in the tone of someone repeating something they had heard enough times to have stored it permanently. Then she looked up. "He's coming." Victoria looked up. Daniel was crossing the bookstore toward them with 2 paper cups of coffee, and when he saw her, his expression did the thing she had noticed before. No performance, no calculation, just acknowledgement. Mild surprise that was genuinely mild. "Victoria," he said. "Lily was educating me about the hoopoe," she said. "She'll do that." He glanced at his daughter. "Did you find the one you wanted?" "I haven't decided," Lily said. "I'm still getting to know them." He did not rush her. He just stood there with his coffee and waited for his daughter to decide, unhurried and unpressured. And Victoria stood with them in the middle of the bookstore, with its particular smell of paper and old radiator heat, and did not feel like she needed to be anywhere else. They met for coffee again in February. Her suggestion this time, but differently, made a text message, direct. No social fiction around it. "I've been thinking about what you said. I'd like to talk," he had replied. Saturday morning. "There's a diner on Milwaukee. I'll be there at 9 with Lily if that's all right." It was so completely unlike any invitation she had received in recent memory, no reservation, no strategy, no optimal setting, that she had sat, looking at her phone, and felt something loosen in her chest. She arrived at the diner at 9. It was a real diner, Formica countertops, booths with cracked vinyl, a coffee maker that had been running continuously since approximately 1987. Lily was in the booth with crayons and a paper placemat, working on something elaborate. Daniel was reading the paper actual newsprint and drinking coffee. Victoria slid into the booth. A server appeared, poured coffee, disappeared. "You come here a lot?" she asked. "Every Saturday," he said. "They have the best eggs in the city, and Lily likes the placemats. They're good for drawing on," Lily said, without looking up. Victoria put her hands around her coffee cup. She had not prepared anything. She had told herself, on the drive over, that she was not going to approach this like a meeting. She was going to just be there. "I've been thinking," she said. "I figured," he said. "You were right." About what you said. She paused. I don't think I was lying when I approached you. I think I genuinely thought I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't being honest with myself about why I wanted it. And there's a difference. He nodded slowly. I've spent a long time treating people like positions to be filled, she said. Like there's a role, and the question is just whether someone qualifies for it. And I don't think I'm a bad person for doing that. I think I just never had a template for something else. She looked at her coffee. My mother and father had a very transactional marriage. Everything was appropriate and arranged and mutual. It was functional. It was also completely loveless. And somewhere along the way I decided that was just how it worked. He was listening the way he did things completely, without interruption, without the small sounds people make to show they're following along. I'm not asking you to fix that, she said. I'm just telling you. Because you told me something true, and I owe you something true in return. He looked at her for a long moment. I know what it's like to decide something can't happen, he said. After Claire died, I told myself I was done with that part of life, not as a punishment. Just as a closing up of a room, because the room had too many things in it that could hurt you. What changed? She asked. He looked at Lily, who was now drawing what appeared to be a very ambitious castle. Her, he said, watching her be completely open to everything. Every single day. She doesn't close rooms. She just walks into them. He was quiet for a moment. I started to think maybe I was doing her a disservice by modeling the other thing. Victoria looked at Lily too. The child was drawing with her tongue slightly out, fully absorbed, oblivious to the significance of the conversation happening around her. She's remarkable, Victoria said. She's 6, he said. They're all like that at 6. We just talk them out of it. She laughed. It came out unexpected, short, genuine, not a social laugh. He seemed slightly startled by it, which made her laugh again. You have a good laugh, he said. No performance in it, just information. I don't use it enough, she said. I know, he said. Outside, it began to snow, the kind of Chicago January snow that comes sideways and means business. The diner windows fogged slightly at the edges. The coffee was replaced by the server, without being asked for. Lily finished her castle, and moved to what appeared to be a very large hoopoe. They stayed until almost 11. They talked about things that didn't matter, and things that did, without a clear line between them, which she was beginning to understand was how talking worked when both people were actually present. He paid for his and Lily's. She paid for hers. Nobody made a thing of it. They did not fall in love with a sudden and decisive crash. They fell in love, the way ice thaws in a city, slowly, practically, in ways you notice only by accumulation. One Saturday diner became a regular thing. The regular thing began to include walks after, the 3 of them. In whichever direction Lily pointed, because she had strong opinions about directions and no particular reason for them, which meant they explored parts of the neighborhood they would not otherwise have reached. In March, Victoria's building needed a significant maintenance overhaul. She made the decision herself, calling it an investment in the property, not mentioning that it meant Daniel and his crew would be in the building every day for 3 weeks. She could not entirely defend this to herself as coincidence. She decided she did not need to. In April, Lily got sick of flu that lasted a week. The kind that required constant attention and cold cloths, and the reading aloud of the same 3 books approximately 14 times. Daniel had no one to leave her with. Victoria came over on the 3rd evening with soup homemade, from a recipe she had spent 45 minutes learning that afternoon, imperfectly executed, slightly too salty. Daniel ate it without comment. Lily, too sick to eat, looked at her from under a pile of blankets and said, "You don't have to stay." "I know," Victoria said. "But you can if you want," Lily said. In the tone of someone granting a significant dispensation, she stayed. She read the books. She was not a natural reader. Aloud she was too precise. Hit the wrong emphases. Missed the rhythms children expect. But Lily corrected her patiently and without condescension. And by the 3rd book she was improving. Daniel sat in the doorway and watched the 2 of them. There was something he had not let himself name happening in that room. He was careful with names. He had learned to be careful. You named a thing too early, and you put weight on it that it wasn't ready to carry. He watched his daughter being read to by this careful, quietly changing woman, and he thought, not yet. But maybe, and maybe, is enough. In May, Victoria was offered a position, an advisory role on a national oversight board, the kind of recognition she had spent years. She took the meeting. She accepted the role. And then she came to the diner the following Saturday and told Daniel about it. Congratulations, he said, and meant it. Simply and completely, thank you, she said. And then, before she could calculate whether this was the appropriate thing to say, I wanted to tell you first. He looked at her. That's a change, he said. Yes, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Why me first? She thought about it. Because you're someone I actually want to know, she said. Not someone I want to have as a benchmark, or a mirror, or a proof of something. Just someone I want. She paused. I know that probably sounds like a low bar. It's actually not, he said. Lily had been listening. In the focused, half-present way children listen when adults talk about something they partially understand. She looked up from her placemat. Are you two going to start dating? She asked. The directness of it was so complete that Victoria felt a laugh start somewhere below her lungs. Lily Daniel started. Because if you are, Lily said, reasonably, I think it's fine. Victoria knows what a hoopoe is. That's important. Daniel looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Daniel. She has a point, Victoria said. What came after was ordinary in the ways that matter most. There was a Sunday in June, when all three of them fixed a broken cabinet door in Lily's room, Daniel doing the actual work, Lily providing extremely specific instructions, Victoria holding the flashlight, and learning the names of tools she had never needed to know. There was a Saturday in July, when they drove out of the city to a nature preserve, and Lily spotted, triumphantly, a bird that she confirmed via her bird book was a red-winged blackbird, and the celebration was entirely disproportionate and completely appropriate. There were evenings when Victoria drove to Avondale and made dinner in Daniel's small kitchen, bumping into the limitations of the space, learning to work within them. There were evenings when Daniel came to the penthouse and stood at the window and looked at the skyline she had looked at for years, and saw something in it. She had stopped seeing the living density of it, the accumulated choices of millions of people, each of them trying to figure out how to be here. You can see everything from up here, he said once. That's why I bought it, she said. But you can't hear anything. She stood beside him and listened. He was right. From up here, the city was silent, arranged, managed. I think I needed that for a long time, she said. And now? She thought about the diner, the paper placemats, the 3-book evenings, the 2 salty soup. Now I think I can go back down, she said. He did not say anything. He put his hand next to hers on the window glass, not quite touching, and they stood there looking at the city they both lived in, that they were both, in different ways and at different speeds, learning to love again. There was a moment, in August, that Lily would probably not remember when she was older but that Victoria would keep. The 3 of them were at the kitchen table in Avondale. A Sunday morning. Late in a way that felt luxurious and earned. Lily was drawing, always drawing, and Daniel was drinking coffee and reading, and Victoria was doing nothing in particular, which she was getting better at. The window was open. There was a sound from outside. Birds, several of them, overlapping. Lily looked up. That's a house sparrow, she said. And maybe a starling. And she paused. Head tilted. I don't know that last one. We could look it up, Victoria said. Lily considered this. Or, she said, we could just listen to it. She said it with the particular authority of a 7-year-old who has figured out something adults usually take much longer to figure out. Then she went back to her drawing. Daniel looked at Victoria over his coffee cup. Just looked. Victoria looked back. Outside, the unknown bird kept singing into the warm morning, and no one named it, and it was enough.